Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, September 11th. That's right, September 11th, 2019. I should have been observing a minute of silence at the beginning of the show as I pressed the wrong buttons and screwed up all my music today. Just checking on things. But everything seems to be rolling A-okay. So you would have had some weird, perhaps musical intro. And then some additional sound effects thrown in there from Willy Wonka just for the fun of it. And, gee, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it didn't disrupt things too much. But, okay, well, we're on our way back here to the regularly scheduled opening of the show. Good morning. How you doing? Let me get my keyboard back in order here and make sure that we have everything in the correct places today. Daily Co's Radio is live now, and some of the mistakes may have been made live. How fun is that? Okay. Bill tells us all the way from Portland, Maine, that he can tell you with 100% certainty that Kagro X, me, David Waldman, will find the silver linings in last night's North Carolina 09 election results. And what? I told you not to tell me what was happening there. Silver lining. Oh, spoiler alert. I TiVo'd the whole election, and I was going to look up today what happened, although I did actually find out before I went to bed, and so we'll have some news about that. I'm sure Greg Dworkin will bring us some news and analysis about it. But yeah, we can find some silver linings about it. It's not hard. And if I don't, well then, Bill just lied to 320 million people on the live Twitter. And look out, everybody. So we'll be looking for consolation prizes. I guess maybe you can make us all feel better with pictures of your squirrel friends, Bill. And we'll share them all around. Oh, look, we have a new competitor a new pretender, I would say, for the KITM hashtag. Have all of you noticed, if any of you actually follow the KITM hashtag, and I don't see any real reason why you should, but, you might as well. You'll see all sorts of fun things. There are a couple other people using the hashtag for various things. The most persistent of which I have seen so far is, I think it may be another podcast, but what it is exactly, I'm not entirely certain, but they use it for Kids in the Middle, and there's a Kids in the Middle Twitter handle out there, not KITM, but actually spelled out Kids in the Middle, and I don't know whether they are. It seems to be that they do sort of parenting tips kind of website. They seem fairly persistent. They tweet once or twice a day with this thing. I think we're still the highest volume user of the hashtag. For a while there was a pop star, maybe of some kind. Certainly pop star is questionable. I don't know. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be able to tell you whether they were famous enough or not. They had a song that had those initials, and I think it was Keep It To Myself. And for a while it was kind of annoying, and I actually muted that. So maybe they're the highest volume user of it. I have no idea. Now that we have a new contender here, I just thought I'd note for the heck of it. Somebody says that they're going to define a new term at a conference in Prague today. So proof that this person has been in Prague. They were going to start talking about Kazakhstan in the middle and use KITM. So we have some interesting neighbors on the hashtag. Anyway, as it turns out, North Carolina's 9th district went pretty much as expected yesterday. So the cheaters win. I guess Republicans expect the rest of us to believe that it's a different person and so therefore not a cheater. But honestly, I really have no idea why anybody settled on this as the fair way of settling the election. You had two contestants. One cheated, he's disqualified, the other one wins. That's how I see it. But of course, Republicans dominate there, sometimes through, or usually through gerrymandering and other election stealing techniques. And guess what? They got to run a brand new race, and I swear to God, this time there's not going to be any cheating at all, even though I think the guy who was at the center of the cheating controversy, I thought I saw, reported that he was like first in line to cast his ballot at his polling place yesterday. So why that even happened, I have no real idea. But okay, That's the way it works out there. I see that Rachel Bidikofer is out there with, or was discussing the race. She looked at it as a big indicator for how Virginia might go. And I think it looked like her first take on the race was that there was a big turnout surge for Republicans that was attributable, she thought, mostly to the Trump appearance day before in the district, and you would think that would boost things, although, Donald Trump is such a Midas in reverse, you start to wonder when it's going to hurt things, but, it's a big partisan rally. That's what happens, and he got people out to the polls, and although there was some additional turnout for the Democrats there, their surge wasn't enough. I don't know what she's going to take that to mean generally for the federal level elections, and I don't know exactly how you analogize that to the Virginia elections, but I assume that it means that Donald Trump will be planning some rallies for Virginia around the election day time here in November. And I don't know whether that's going to be enough to turn things around or whether that's supposed to be early warning for Virginia Democrats that they need to be countering this. I mean, that would be a smart thing to do, right? But we will see. But he's still got a turnout draw to his name, and that's something that's going to have to be countered. And I assume that also means that you're going to have to counter it with some kind of message that's going to be exciting, since we don't have a rally counterpart for Democrats. And, it might be the case that taking it slow and going straight down the middle, and maybe we should just let him impeach himself. And by the way, we're in a major constitutional crisis on every front, and possibly international crises looming in the hot spots of the world, but perhaps you'd like to talk about this technocratic fix to the capital gains tax. Might not do the trick. Anyway, Greg Dworkin is here. He'll have more insight into what's going on with this, I hope, because I don't want to look any more up. Hi, Greg. How are you?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm
so
bad.
You can take a couple of things from this.
Yes. Okay.
All right. If you want to use the most recent analogy, in a lot of ways, this feels like Georgia 6 back in the day with John Ossoff running.
Okay.
I mean, it was a relatively close race that we lost in a place where it shouldn't be close. It would be like Democrats having to work real hard to win Berkeley.
Yeah, and, we're not likely to want to do that.
It's like the third most Republican district in the country, and as Dave Wasserman wrote last night, Republicans should feel relieved they avoided a loss, but here's why Bishop's 2% win isn't encouraging. There are 35 GOP-held House seats less Republican than North Carolina 09. Mm-hmm. That's based on the Cook Partisan Voter Index.
Yes.
So this was a very Trumpy district. I think it was like a +9 PVI. It was +12 Trump,
yes.
And it was +2 for Bishop.
Right.
So when you build everything up and have a ton of hype, like with the Ossoff race, you lose track of what actually should happen. Mm-hmm. And what actually should happen is that this shouldn't have been close. It shouldn't have been close at all. There were some pretty good articles about that yesterday. Dave Byler had one in the Washington Post before the election, what you can and can't expect to learn from the North Carolina special election. And the general environment is that Trump is highly unpopular. More on that from the Washington Post this morning. We'll get to those polls.
All right.
But generic ballot polls are basically doing fine for the Democrats. It looks a lot like 2018. This was the last race in 2018, and we won a lot, but we didn't win them all. And a wave can only carry you so much when you have a very high PVI. So it feels like a loss because we were close enough to be able to win. And, of course, the way the dynamics work out in North Carolina 9 is that the early vote comes in. That's it's not total vote by mail, because vote by mail doesn't have to be counted until Friday. But early vote tends to favor Democrats in this particular district. We've seen that over the past couple of years, and then the late vote is Republican. So if the Democrat is to win, and I even saw a prediction, basically the Democrat has to be 8,000 votes up when the early vote is in to have a chance, and they were 7,700 vots up, so you knew it was going to be a close race, and it was a close race. Republicans did turn out. So Rachel actually said a couple of different things about that.
Oh, well, I only read one, so
there you go.
Right.
The fact is that what happens is that Republicans are going to be motivated in 2020, and their side is going to turn out. And that, it's sort of like Ohio 2004,
yes.
with Kerry Bush. And Kerry hit his targets. And Bush hit his targets, and targets for Bush were set higher. And so Bush wound up winning Ohio and the presidency in that particular election. The point is that you can't expect Republicans to stay home. That's not what it looks like right now. Things could change. Trump could get worse. A whole lot of things could happen. But right now, it looks like Republicans will be motivated to vote for Trump and Republicans. And the way Democrats win is the way they won in 2018, which is to say there was a Republican turnout. There was a surge. But there was a bigger Democratic surge. We didn't get that in North Carolina 9, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Not all of them are totally clear. One reason is that we didn't get, as you pointed out, the Democratic surge that one would normally expect, but that's not necessarily the kind of district where you can find those things. It's like looking at a non-Roy Moore Alabama race.
Okay.
Republicans are going to turn out. Democrats can only win if they turn out more. But where are you going to get more from?
Yes.
In a state where it's really red. That's just really difficult to do. What you have to do is you have to have a candidate who's bad enough so that you suppress a little bit of the vote, and that's how Doug Jones beat Roy Moore in Alabama. Last time around, McCready came within a couple of hundred votes of winning because the other guy was not so good. Dan Bishop, the other Dan, everybody predicted Dan would win. It was Dan McCready and Dan Bishop. The other Dan Bishop, was a better fit for the district. And so for McCready, a little bit harder to run against. And why the percentages weren't as good for him in some of the rural counties is not so clear. But he got all of his votes as expected from relatively large Union County, which is Republican, and that's where the Republican surge, such as it was there. I think they got 2/3 of the vote that they got in overall that they got in 2018, and 2018 was a really big year. So people did turn out. And as you point out, in this case, the Republican surge is bigger than the Democratic surge. What does that mean for 2020? Very little, because the rest of the country, as Dave Wasserman points out, isn't North Carolina 9. So if you're only running in Alabama and North Carolina 9, you're going to have a very, very difficult time. But if you're running across the whole country, you actually do a little bit better than that. So it's going to feel like a loss. Losing sucks. But, to put in perspective, making it close in a place that wasn't supposed to be close to begin with is a decent thing. And it says very little about what's actually going to happen in 2020. Special elections, as they say, are special.
Yes. Well, Trump can't go to every district. That's one thing.
Ossoff losing didn't, tell you what was going to happen in 2018 for the rest of the election. It's not that predictive.
All your firepower in one place, weird things happen. That's what the special election thing is about. What makes it annoying, of course, is Trump now struts around as he usually does and says that. Well, he's also, I see Daniel Dale pointing out that I guess during the rally he told everybody. Dan Bishop was 17 points behind in the polls, but I rallied him to, I turned this race around. Almost 20 points just by myself. Not true.
Yeah, one of the things Daniel Dale has done really well with is it isn't just Trump lies.
Yeah.
It's that he almost invariably, no matter what it is, whether it's his height, his IQ, his grade point average, you name it, the number of cans of tuna he has in his cabinet, he exaggerates.
Yes.
So if it's 3, all of a sudden it's 13 or 33. Yes. If this is the best thing that's happened in 3 years, the next thing it's the best thing that's happened in 10 years, and the next time he tells it, it's the best thing that happens in 30 years.
Right.
I mean, this is the pattern, the verbal tick, if you will, of a con man.
Right.
And so he just works everything in that. You cannot believe a single thing he says. You just can't, because chances are it's not going to be true.
Always the case. Ask any member of the press, of course, who is the presidential candidate who was the serial exaggerator, and they will tell you it's Al Gore.
It's Al Gore, right. And so,
Just
there you have it, just to put in perspective. Back to Dave Byler's piece before the election.
In fact, it's George
Narratives
Washington.
are easy to predict. If Republican Dan Bishop handily wins, Republicans will be ecstatic. That's not what happened. They'll claim the polls are wrong about President Trump. That's going to happen because they're going to claim that.
Yes.
And his brands and the GOP's are in good shape. And Trump will write a tweet that simultaneously congratulates Bishop and takes credit for his win.
Yes.
This is what he wrote before. He wrote this yesterday.
Yep.
Right? And Democrats will worry that the polls are systematically underestimating the president's strength. And if Democrat Dan McCready wins or comes close, which is what happened, the blue team will see it as yet another sign that Trump is destined for a 2020 loss. I'm not predicting that.
Yeah.
Neither is Rachel Bitterkoffer.
Okay.
But people will say that. Some people will say, some Republicans will worry that they made a mistake by running a proponent of the state's infamous bathroom bill, which turned out to be a disaster for them business-wise. And others will panic about the party's ability to win even light red states like North Carolina, as if North Carolina 9 is representative of the entire state, which it is not. And we don't really need to look at special elections to get a good read of the national political mood. The polls are all basically saying the same thing. Approval polls show that Trump is highly unpopular. Generic ballot polls, which correctly forecast the 2018 House results, show that down-ballot Republicans are not performing particularly well. Trump is behind most of his potential Democratic opponents in national and swing state polls of the 2020 race. He's just not that popular, says David Byler. You've heard me say that.
Yes.
Trump could still win re-election. Maybe his Democratic opponent will be too far to the left for swing voters. Maybe Trump will be able to damage them through personal and policy attacks. There's a lot we don't know. But the special election in North Carolina, no matter how many ways we dissect it, won't tell us what's going to happen.
Why not?
Because it doesn't and it won't.
No. All right. Well, who does? And how much does it cost?
Well, let's look at some other things here. This was something I had up in the Pundit Reddit this morning, but it was a tweet from yesterday. In other news, Trump has his lowest approval rating in our tracking since the shutdown. He was at 40.9 in the aggregate, with the more important 54.2 disapproving, which is quite important. And there was a series of polls that came out that John Harwood was noting, basically having Trump in the high 30s. CNN poll came out and notes that if you ask people who deserves re-election, white non-college men say 56%, white non-college women 47%, white college graduates 39%, white college graduate women 29%. Or if you want to look at it differently, white men say 54% he deserves, they approve of his job. White women 42%, Hispanic men 37%, Hispanic women 23%, black men 15%, black women 3%.
Yeah. That's actually three women.
That's a heavy voting contingent by the
Diamond,
way.
Silk, and someone else.
Yeah, they're the three. Right. Diamond, Silk, and someone else. There's your three right there, and that's about it. John Harwood had a lovely piece also the other day trying to summarize some of this stuff, and this is right after the ABC Washington Post poll came out yesterday, showing that approval rating among voting age Americans stands at 38%, down 6 points. And then today they have a poll that looks at head-to-heads, and in the Post-ABC News poll among registered voters, Biden 55, Trump 40.
Yes.
Sanders 52, Trump 43. Warren 51, Trump 44. Harris 50, Trump 43. And Buttigieg 47, Trump 43. So if you're looking at the top 3 or 4 contenders, looking at the top 3 especially, Trump loses. So he got all mad about it and started tweeting about how the Washington Post is a fake poll and this and that and everything else.
No, of course.
So you know he's paying attention.
That's good.
And yeah. So Biden beats Trump by 15, Bernie by 9, and Warren by 7. And that's the background. And Byler was citing that background before he even went into what happened in North Carolina 9, because he wrote the article before that happened.
Well,
right. And sense. 3 Trump job rating polls in the last few days: CNN 39 approval, 55 disapprove; Post ABC 38 approval, 56 disapprove; Gallup 39 approve, 57% disapprove. The guy's unpopular.
Sounds similar. Yes.
Right. So that's basically what happened in North Carolina 9 and how one puts it into perspective.
Okay.
It's a loss. We don't like losses. Losses don't feel good. Doesn't change a thing about 2020. And Trump is still not in good shape.
Well, that's never been true.
Yeah. So
Okay.
let's talk a little bit about merry old England before we move on.
Yes. All right.
Stuff happened. Of course, John Bercow resigned. Did we talk about that?
We didn't, but I mentioned it yesterday. I said that would be possibly devastating for you.
No, it was terrible. So, although he went out the way he wanted to go out, but in the pundit roundup at the bottom, I sort of had a best of. I had a couple of his really great speeches. I had the one where he explained to the members of Parliament why Trump should not speak in Parliament, why he should not, if he's coming, be allowed to speak to Parliament. There are other venues he could use. Right? And Michael Gove, one of the sycophants for Boris Johnson, was not behaving himself. So I have his be a good boy.
Okay.
Sit down and behave yourself in this house. So those were good. But I think more pertinent is something that happened overnight, which is very odd.
Okay.
You will remember that we were talking about the fact that the Parliament was prorogued.
Yes.
Prorogation. We had a whole discussion about what that is and the fact that it was basically told to go home and stop meeting. Mm-hmm. And whereas that's a normal thing to do with the Queen's instruction in between sessions, Boris Johnson specifically did it to shut Parliament down so that they would be in a lesser position, a worse position, a weaker position, to try to stop his no-deal Brexit exit.
Yes. Right.
Okay. And it didn't work because what happened is Parliament got together and said, you know what? We are going to pass a law before you get rid of us in the short period of time that we have, with the aid of rebels from your own party, the Rebel Alliance, and we will get together and we'll pass a law that says that Parliament is supreme and we're going to direct you to not do a no deal Brexit, but rather we're going to instruct you to try to get an extension, even if you don't want to, because it'll be the law and you're required to follow the law. So they went ahead and they passed that, and the Lords passed it and got royal assent. That's capital letters. And so it became law. And Boris Johnson said, I'd rather be dead in a ditch. And it's not clear at this particular point whether he's going to follow the will of Parliament, in which case it may wind up leading him to either resign or be thrown in jail.
Cool.
That's not clear yet. But while this is happening, that's kind of old news, even though it's still fascinating news. While this is happening, members of Parliament went to the various jurisdictions affected. This is one of those who has standing to complain about prorogation.
I see.
So they go to the courts in England and Wales.
Hello, courts.
High Court there doesn't want to take this, says it's all political, just like our Supreme Court would do. But also goes to Northern Ireland and goes to Scotland, to their courts, and says prorogation is illegal. We want you to take this case up and explain to the Prime Minister he can't do this.
Okay. Did they understand their accent?
Enough so that the headline in The Guardian says Scottish judges rule PM's suspension of Parliament is unlawful. Appeals court says prorogation order void, but fails to issue injunction for MPs to return. Basically, Parliament said, we don't like what you're doing, and minority members of Parliament, because the Tories had the majority at the time, the minority party took this case to court and said, we think prorogation is illegal. We think they're doing it for political reasons and not the stated reason.
Okay.
Or if you want to put it in more simple terms, we're telling you that we don't believe Boris Johnson told the truth. And worse, we think he lied to the Queen.
That's probably bad.
It is not necessarily good. So David Alan Green, who legal commentator on law and policy, contributing editor to the Financial Times, has this little tweet storm here, which I'm going to read because I just think it's fascinating. It's not that long.
But thought I'd say
he's beginning to realize, and he's got some Financial Times, which is behind the paywall stuff, to back this up. But 2 hours ago, he writes, on the astonishing Scots law case, some general points. Scots law is different, sometimes very different, to the law of England and Wales. This includes a different approach to constitutional law matters and why the Scottish court is able to take a different view on the legality prorogation to that of the English court. The English High Court didn't want to take it up. This means something which is unconstitutional can also be unlawful in Scotland, even if held to be lawful by the High Court in London. And same in theory with the Northern Irish courts, the other place where they took it. This is why I and others would have put the chances of the action succeeding in London as zero, and why the action was launched in Scotland in a canny way, where judges in the law would be far more receptive. So kudos to Joan Cherry and other parliamentarians for taking this case forward. And then next tweet is, crikey. The Scottish court has found unanimously that the Prime Minister misled the Queen. In effect, the court has held that Boris Johnson lied to the Queen so as to obtain prorogation. Wow, just wow. Not seen a court decision like this in 30 years of constitutional geekery.
Exciting. I gave an Australian crikey there accidentally.
Yeah. Johnson's premiership has not got off to a good start. He's lost his first 6 parliamentary votes, including losing control of the business of Parliament. But this defeat is of far more constitutional significance than the loss of any vote in the House of Commons. He is the first prime minister to have been found by a court to have misled a king or queen.
Wow.
And what happened is that in preparing this case, it's like discovery. So the plaintiffs say, we want notes showing that Johnson was telling the truth and Johnson refused to turn them over.
Oh. Well,
and David Allen Green, the commenter, says, very much Sherlock Holmes' curious incident for the dog not barking.
I guess
its absence meant the Scottish judges could infer improper motive. More after the break.
I thought they could, and so they did. And I bet they didn't sound like that at all when they did it. But how interesting that you have those. You even have jurisdiction shopping in the UK. Excellent. We'll be back in 2. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Fun banter in between in the break. Okay, well, we're learning an awful lot about English and British parliamentary procedure and some weird players in all this, and now some court procedure too. I'm interested in finding that there's jurisdiction shopping going on there, just like here. It makes a difference, and we'll see how much sway it holds, though. I did see in some of the articles about it that I'll have to figure out exactly what this means, but I did see the subheader for the Guardian piece that you brought up here was Scottish judges rule PM suspension of Parliament is unlawful, but then it says appeals court says prorogation order void, but fails to issue injunction for MPs to return. And I don't know whether that means an actual injunction for them to return. Like, I don't know how you really enjoin them to return.
Nobody's going to really fight about it because the government will ask for an appeal from the Supreme Court, and I guess we get that on Friday.
Okay. Well, that'll clear things up.
So that'll clear things up a little bit here. But I think the main thing to remember, of course, is that it's the 50th anniversary of Monty Python. So
sure.
Just look at it in terms of those.
Right, so that's why now it makes more sense that their appeal says help I'm being oppressed. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a little short, but
yeah, no, but it kind of gets to the point. Oh, by the way, for Monty Python fans, the BBC has released a series of otherwise hitherto unknown sketches on radio
really?
that they have at their website, so you can listen to some early Monty Python things that perhaps you've never heard before. But that may be that as it may. Here is David Allen Green writing in Financial Times, I'm afraid probably behind a paywall. But it's an article called The Curious Incident of the Missing Witness Statement. The British government's failure to provide official evidence is conspicuous. He says, some legal cases are more interesting for what happens or doesn't happen during the proceedings than for the actual result. And sometimes it's a piece of evidence or missing piece of evidence which can be the most important thing about a case. So the High Court in London turned down this case that we were talking about.
Right.
A similar challenge in Scotland is still going on at the time of his writing. They hadn't decided. Both legal actions are arguable and they may ultimately prevail. The Supreme Court could declare that it was unlawful for the government to ask the Queen to prorogue Parliament during the run-up to October 31st, the date on which the UK is set to leave the EU by automatic operations of law. It is more likely that the justices will sidestep the claim, saying it is non-justiciable and a matter for politics, not law. I guess similar to what the Supreme Court said about gerrymandering. Not our problem, that's politics. We don't want to deal with this. They could do that.
They could,
but
I guess.
As with Sherlock Holmes' dog that did not bark in the night, there was a strange omission from the evidence put before the court. The challengers argue that the government had an improper motive in seeking prorogation. They said the real intention was a cynical effort to close down Parliament so it could not block a no-deal Brexit. And the more I think about this, we have to think about it. We Yanks, we Americans have to think about it in terms of gerrymandering, because then all of this stuff makes more sense to us. So it could not block a no-deal Brexit, rather than the stated reason that it was merely to facilitate a new Queen's speech and the launch of a new parliamentary session. Or voter ID, you know. We just want to do voter ID because it's cleaner and it's good government. And the other side is going to say, no, you're trying to actually suppress the black vote. And if you can find stuff written down that says that, it makes your case stronger. That's where this is going. So usually there's a straightforward way to rebut, if not refute, such an allegation of bad faith. Those facing such an accusation can, and normally would, submit what they call a witness statement from a senior official or minister setting out the account of how a decision was made, detailing the relevant consideration and information on which the decision was based. Such evidence, if cogent, defeats such a challenge unless the evidence can be controverted or bad faith shown. But the government did not provide a witness statement in this case. There's been no official explanation. That absence in this kind of litigation is conspicuous. Now, there's three possible reasons. The first is a deliberate prior and tactical decision was made not to put evidence in. That's possible. The second is that the government planned to put in such witness evidence, but something came up to frustrate the process. Maybe documents couldn't be found or unexpected information came to light. Maybe litigators ran out of time. All these things are possible, but it must be noted that the government lawyers who handle these kinds of things are among the best in the profession. But there's a third possibility. Joanna Cherry, an experienced advocate and the Scottish Nationalist MP behind the case in Edinburgh, otherwise known as parliamentary expert and really good at process, has already raised it as a parliamentary select committee issue and as former Attorney General Dominic Grieve on the floor of the House of Commons. Could it be that a witness statement was intended and prepared but that the relevant senior officials refused to sign it? Or that the document contained something the government didn't want the court to know? Ms. Cherry asked Michael Gove, the minister responsible for no-deal planning, that's the one that John Bercow always makes fun of, about it. He said he had absolutely no idea. Now, witness statements are formal court documents, and it is a criminal offense to sign one that you know to be incorrect. There are serious documents for serious people, these things, as far apart from the trivial discourse of political sloganeering and promises as one can imagine. Witness statements matter. The government's position on prorogation is that the request was made for routine reasons, but that's the official version. The government has disclosed some documents which on their face show that it was routine, but Ms. Cherry and others claim basically that they were talking about this in unofficial communications like WhatsApp messages and emails that otherwise are not part of the official piece here. And they want all of that information out so they can discuss this. And the author here writes, my own view is if the government's disclosed documents were the entire story, then a witness statement wouldn't have been a problem. So, if the reason for prorogation was not that which was given, then this, regardless of any legal sanction, shows that the government continues to casually abuse constitutional norms. And that is why our attention must be drawn to the curious incident of the missing witness statement at this time.
I see. Sort of.
And so the Scottish courts may have decided based on that if you're not serious about giving us the information we want, we have no choice but to rule against you.
I guess. Yeah.
And then it goes to the Supreme Court in the UK, and then they'll decide what to do. But pretty fascinating stuff, and it reminds me of voter ID arguments and gerrymandering actual cases. Like if an expert writes and then dies, crazy. But leaves to his daughter on a thumbnail all the maps they made to gerrymander, and actually had attached to it all this information about what race of people lives in these areas.
And how we'll get rid of them.
And how we'll get rid of, how we'll do it in such a way that advantages Republicans. One might get the sense that this is racially biased.
Yes.
And if you don't have that information, it's much harder to make that case. But if you do have the information, it's like, oh my gosh, look what happened here. And that actually happened, folks. So it's similar documentation showing that they were lying up the wazoo about what they were doing. And let's be honest and frank about this, may we? You can't just go around. You just can't go about lying to the Queen like that.
Right, and you don't even normally you don't have to go about.
I sentence you to 3 seasons of Downton Abbey until you get this right.
It's a movie coming out soon, so you'll be able to sentence him to that. Yeah. It's interesting too. Also, the mention of WhatsApp. Did they say they did include some of those messages in their submission? That's odd.
The anti-Brexiteers, the rebels, claim that, of course, your documents don't show that you were doing this for the wrong reason. Your discussions about the wrong reason were taken offline and done in places like WhatsApp. So we want to see that too.
Oh yes. Well, there's okay. I thought that was. I thought that would be more likely the case.
That hasn't been proven, and we don't have those.
Although I do have this story. It reminded me because I just wanted to straighten this out because I do have a story from BuzzFeed from a few days ago that apparently there were some leaks from the WhatsApp conversations among the no-deal Brexiteers, and the headline that BuzzFeed opted to go with was "Leaked WhatsApp Reveal," or WhatsApps they call them. Leaked WhatsApps reveals some Tory MPs are urging Boris Johnson to break the law to deliver Brexit. So we'll have to see exactly what law that is and how they plan.
Well, that's where the accusation comes from.
Yeah.
Whether or not they actually do that, and whether that's all the conversation. You can have a conversation that's leaked, and the next one that wasn't leaked says, well, no, that's ridiculous. We can't break the law. We're not going to do that. And if you don't have the whole picture, you can't really say.
Right. But if the picture that you do have is of Boris Johnson, you can make a pretty good guess.
Well, again, if you didn't turn them over, that's, suggestive evidence that, we have to go with what we have, maybe our interpretation of if it's Boris Johnson, don't believe it, but that's what the whole fight's about here.
All right. Well, just making sure that I understood correctly, because it sounded at the first like you had said, no, they didn't. They had.
Well, I don't know.
They had sent WhatsApps instead of real documents.
All of the information that they want in order to do this. Certainly enough to accuse the other side of not being in good faith.
I'm going to accuse them of that.
But the bigger issue, according to this lawyer, is that the government never actually submitted a formal witness statement.
Yeah, I guess they felt like they didn't need to, and I'm not sure.
Or they weren't going to. That's his point. They weren't going to, and go ahead, make me.
Yeah, see if you can do that from up in Scotland, and I guess there could be some of that too. I know that the Scottish judges may rule this way, but the thing is, we'll be appealing that to a place where they won't feel this way.
Well, we'll find out.
Yes. Well, and I'm sure there'll be some odd factor and maybe some new terms and some weird things that sit around in the courtroom that we'll have to learn about. And we'll see how they decorate the place, and that'll make all the difference.
Right. Anyway, so we have that going on. And the other thing we wanted to catch up on, of course, is I don't know if you had a chance to go over the annual Weather Association conference.
No, I didn't.
Members of the National Weather Service's Birmingham office, which tweeted that Alabama would not see impacts from Hurricane Dorian, received a standing ovation at the annual Weather Association conference. Okay, and I wanted to give you this brief tweet storm, which is a weatherman who happened to be at the conference, describing the comments about the keynote speaker. Dr. Jacobs, who is the acting NOAA administrator.
Acting. Oh, wait. I have that. Right. Acting! Yes, there we are.
There you go. He's acting, okay? And he happened to be at the conference.
Well.
And he gives a big sigh.
Really is acting.
This is how they're reporting. A not in the transcript sigh.
Okay.
And says, I was going to talk about other things. I was going to talk about something other than, but now I have to talk about something far more important.
Did you want to talk about the weather, or were you
He
just
wanted to
making
talk about the
chit-chat?
weather, but he's going to have to talk about this.
Okay.
So he says, the service you all provide is important. I have been personally impacted by Hugo. We didn't take into account the trees. We had damage. I worked at a state climate office. I spent time in the forecast office. In January 2000, a snowstorm inspired my research project at North Carolina State. That was the beginning of my love for all of this. And I wanted to improve what we do in forecasting. Mm-hmm. There are many positive stories about Dorian that aren't being heard. The FV3 performed extremely well. I spent time with FEMA. Oh, by the way, the FEMA a person in Puerto Rico was just picked up for stealing funds from the rescue effort.
Yes,
That's
not Puerto Rican people, but people dispatched by our government to Puerto Rico, which is included as part of our government.
Trump was complaining about
Trump
all the
mainlanders.
ethnic corruption there, but it turns out it's the people he sent.
Yeah, right. That's the story. Okay.
Right. Anyway,
Got
the
it.
message was big storm, big response. NOAA was part of the process. We were ready for a Category 5. And despite the challenges, the National Hurricane Center 5-day forecast beat the track error by 20%. I have to give praise to the storm surge unit there. They saved many lives and saved a lot of money by not evacuating those who wouldn't be impacted.
Like who?
Like people in Alabama.
All
in
right.
2017, the president signed the weather bill. He also signed the drought bill. The idea behind this is to enhance everything we do. The code is to be simplified and made public to help the model, because this forecast is not very user-friendly. So folks in the White House are genuinely interested in improving weather forecasts, how they are interpreted and conveyed to the public. And we help interface the weather enterprise to reach a wider population. People don't know how to interpret model output, but they know how to act when giving instructions by people who do. And communicating risk is extremely challenging, which just goes to show when they show you that cone of uncertainty where the center of the storm goes. First of all, it stops at 5 days and makes it look like the storm's going to stop, but of course it goes on, and the people in Nova Scotia know that after looking at the 5-day forecast about Florida. It keeps going. And at the same time, that's where the center of the storm is, not where the winds stop or not where the storm stops impacting. So you have to be careful about interpreting the model, and it takes the weather people on TV and the Meteorological Service and the National Weather Service in Birmingham to tell people, here's the map, you can look at it for yourself, but this is what it means. Mm-hmm. And he says Dorian was a difficult storm to forecast. The track was first named at Florida. Then we looked at a potential stall. Having a Category 5 storm sitting just off the coast is a nerve-wracking time for forecasters. Now, the purpose of the NOAA statement did not say that we understand and fully support the good intent of National Weather Service Birmingham to calm fears and support public safety. I'm proud of the outstanding work they do.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
A Category 5, 100 miles off the coast storm is intimidating for forecasters to deal with. At one point, Alabama was in the mix, as was most of the Southeast. Members were all over the place. Stalled storm is a forecast nightmare. It's days before it was cleared up. And then Trump went on and said that. So Trump was working with a very, very old estimate.
That was the last thing he looked at before he went golfing.
Right. There is no pressure to change the way to forecast risk in the future. Nobody's job at risk, not mine, not yours, he said to everybody there. Mm-hmm. Moving forward, I learned the National Weather Service should be at the table with FEMA at all briefings. This is critical if we're going to be analyzing forecast output. We need somebody who knows how to interpret forecasts. I hope this elevated interest will lead to elevated funding to help us communicate forecasts. People don't understand ensembles, probabilistic, spaghetti plots. It's why we don't make those plots. There's a lot of misunderstanding about the cone.
Yeah.
The end of the cone stops because that's where the storm is in 120 hours, not because the storm stops. How do we communicate risk? Not easy. The community doesn't understand that. It's hard to translate that, and we need social scientists to help. We've come a long way. Weather should not be a partisan issue, any more than vaccine should be, I would add. I've known some of you for 25 years. I'm the same person I was last Thursday. I'm a modeler and forecaster. I'm visiting as many local areas as I can. I'll call into the rest. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, the emergency managers. Thank you, Birmingham. And thank you for the job you do and the lives you save.
Thank you.
And then he left the building.
Okay, right. Though people were
Didn't want
asking
to
him
answer
to come
questions.
back and do Freebird, he just left.
Right.
All right. Wow. Well, that was a lot. Yeah, and okay.
There's a lot going on. Now there's a congressional investigation.
Yes,
There's
there has to be.
the chief scientist, which is this guy, looking into exactly what happened. It seems pretty clear that, as you pointed out on the show on Monday, that nobody was speaking for NOAA and that their statement really wasn't a statement. Now, you made some other reasons for it, like don't ever believe anything anybody says in the Trump administration. But the fact of the matter is, it is pretty clear now, and especially after this, that that statement was not speaking for NOAA, at least not for the scientists there.
Yeah, and that's why we have NOAA. So I mean, the fact that they have stationary and spokespeople isn't it's not the reason we started NOAA. The scientists are. If we want to hear something of value from NOAA, it has to come with their approval, and this didn't.
All right, and then finally, the other topic we have to cover for today.
Yes.
You don't have the professor to kick around anymore.
No.
The professor from Felix the Cat with the white mustache.
Oh.
John Bolton. He's out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yes, okay, I gotcha. Yeah, that's true. Although, he has a habit of coming back. I mean, not in this administration. I don't think, although I don't know. Trump's nuts, so maybe he will. Maybe he'll change his mind. But yeah, he's out, and that's usually a good thing. And honestly, if the Bolton term in office just suddenly lost its last 16 months, it wouldn't make a bit of difference. I'm just adapting from his theory of the UN Secretariat there. But
it's kind of interesting because what he did in a short period of time there is completely ruin the national security apparatus.
Good job.
Blow it up, and then he left.
Right. So he took the top 10 floors off, and we'll see if it makes any difference.
Right, exactly. So the whole thing is just very weird.
Yeah.
My little picture I just sent you of the professor looking just like John Bolton.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's ordinarily it does look like him. It's a good thing, and Abby thinks so too, that John Bolton is out. I mean, I guess it's not great that we have no national security advisor. Although Abby's doing a fine job. It's certainly, she's no more doctrinaire than he is. I hear the barking. Well, we'll see. Maybe it's John Bolton at the door, even looking for a new job.
He's got no place to go, no place to stay, so maybe he came over here.
Yeah, right. He figures the weather's good for now. You got a generator. I'm going to go move into Greg's place.
I have to say, Abby is really good. It's like at 9:50 every day.
Yeah.
Something happens and
it's
somebody
like
comes.
My alarm goes off that says it's time for a break.
Anyway,
Yes.
The fact of the matter is that the whole today, of course, is 9/11, and it's
Right.
the anniversary of that horrible day.
Yes.
And at or about that day, that was when Donald Trump decided, in his infinite wisdom, probably on the advice of Jared, that it would be a good idea to invite the Taliban to Camp David.
Yes, it's Taliban.
To celebrate
Sleepover
9/11.
day. Mm-hmm.
And have a sleepover there, right? And John Bolton, I'm sure, didn't like that and spoke against it, and that's undoubtedly one of the reasons that he's gone.
Yeah, that and the mustache.
Chuck Todd was making the case yesterday that part of the issue is that he did something stupid like the weather thing we were just talking about, and Bolton didn't rush to Trump's defense about the Taliban issue in public. Who was it? Mike Pence. Everybody who is associated with the Trump administration, when Trump screws up, you are obligated to immediately tweet or rush to the television camera and say, no, Trump actually had it right. 2 + 2 is 5. Excuse me, 2 + 2 are 5. And he had it right when he said that, and you all are getting it wrong in his fake news. So when Trump screws up, everybody's supposed to rush to say, no, he was correct. And if you don't do that, he fires you.
No.
So he screwed up with the Taliban thing. Bolton told him not to do it. He did it. Then he undid it. And Bolton didn't rush to say, no, Trump was right. Like Liz Cheney did. This was a horrible idea. Trump was right to fix it. That's what you're supposed to do.
I guess so.
When you work for Trump, and he didn't do it, so he's out.
So, well, I guess.
He calls H.R. McMaster for advice.
I guess we take a look at who did and find our new acting national security advisor from among the ranks there, unless they just leave it to, whoever happens to be sitting there
Trump
now.
probably said something like, hey, I heard this guy Dorian is really powerful. Why don't we ask him and see if he wants to do it?
Yeah, he's
the
from
kid
Alabama.
The lawn is busy, so let's get somebody else.
Right. Well, you'll have to come up with someone.
Hey, kid, you want to be my national security advisor? It doesn't matter. I'm not going to listen to you.
Right.
The other thing is speculation I saw. There's a list of names, and it doesn't really matter who it is because Trump's going to make his own decisions and screw up all by himself. But the question is, will Mike Pompeo do a Henry Kissinger? Will he be the national security advisor and secretary of state at the same time?
Oh. I don't know. How's his accent?
I don't know, but Pompeo certainly, and I have extremely low opinion of Pompeo, but he's certainly been doing his job in terms of trying to, make a power center for himself.
What about
just
Mulvaney?
Like Mulvaney. Well, those are the two. They're going to split the government between them, and whoever, whatever's left, Jared gets.
How many have you got?
And that's it.
Those
jobs. Are the only three people that have any impact or input whatsoever with this president. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, we'll see how long that lasts. One of them's got to go eventually.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll see who gets stabbed in the back, who ends up as the acting national security advisor. Somebody else pointing out here on the anniversary of 9/11, I think there's no national security advisor. There's no...
it's the fourth one he's had,
Yeah,
there it is.
It will be, yeah.
Anyway, that's
no
my
heads
summary.
of anything. Okay.
Let's see what Abby was fussing about, but
Yes.
that's the story.
Okay.
So, anything I left out? Any questions?
Sure, lots
Any
of
answers?
things. That's what we have Thursday for.
That's true.
But I don't know what any of them are. But I have 24 hours to figure it out, and then forget and let you tell me what it was or what you've collected since then.
So I'll be back tomorrow, and
yes.
I'm sure stuff will happen, and
Positive.
maybe we'll get a little bit more information about the details about North Carolina 9. But the bigger picture is the polls are actually kind of converging a little bit here, and they're not necessarily good for Trump. So we'll go from that. Take care, and I will talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, very good. Thanks again. We'll see you tomorrow. And I got lots to ponder here from what you've collected. Okay. What's news? Let's see. Just a few more minutes before the break, and we'll see whether we can find some tidbits that can fit inside that window. And we'll see if we can get a fix on when we might hear from Jonah what she wants to talk about, so we can try and save some of the fun stories. Let's see. I did grab, we already covered the British situation and the Scottish ruling, although I'm going to do some extra reading on that one, I think. Maybe we'll clear up the FEMA Puerto Rico situation. I've grabbed a CBS News story on that one from yesterday. Brian Pascus reporting former top FEMA officials arrested on fraud charges in Puerto Rico. Former top FEMA officials who worked in Puerto Rico, and again, these are not Puerto Rican folks. These are the people Trump sent, essentially. And through all sorts of convoluted relationships, they are related to a number of, disfavored figures or former figures in the Trump administration. Okay. So they were arrested on Tuesday in a federal corruption investigation. The investigation centers around alleged bribes that secured a $1.8 billion contract to repair Puerto Rico's damaged electrical grid. Federal authorities arrested Asha Tribble, I'm guessing A-H-S-H-A. Asha, would you say? Asha Tribble, FEMA's former deputy regional administrator who worked in Puerto Rico after the storm. I'm going to alternate it between the Americanized Puerto Rico and the Spanishized Puerto Rico, and go with the easier, faster pronunciation for me as an English-speaking person. Okay, who else got arrested? Donald Keith Ellison, that's confusing enough. I mean, they should probably call him Donald Ellison because it's not Keith Ellison. That's his middle name, though. Former president of energy company Cobra Acquisitions, which, if Cobra Acquisitions doesn't sound like an energy company that's actually involved in repairing things, you'd not be alone in that in that surmise, and it's probably part of the reason he ended up getting arrested. Not the name of the company, but the hint that it gives you. Jovanda Patterson, who worked as Tribble's chief of staff, was also arrested. The indictment, which was returned by a federal grand jury in the District of Puerto Rico on Tuesday, lists 15 counts of corruption against the three. They include charges against Tribble and Ellison of conspiracy to commit bribery, honest services wire fraud, and disaster fraud. That's a disastrous kind of thing to be charged with. Tribble was separately charged with Travel Act violations, while Ellison was separately charged with making false statements to federal agents. A lot of that going around these days. Patterson, who worked directly under Tribble and was later hired by Cobra Acquisitions, was charged with committing acts affecting personal financial conflicts of interest and wire fraud. Cobra Acquisitions was the main contractor for the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority and they didn't execute enough people, but they executed 2 contracts with the agency for a total value of $1.8 billion, according to the Justice Department. Work completed by Cobra for the island's damaged electrical infrastructure was paid through the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, or PREPA, as we've heard it referred to by Armando on the show, by federal funds from FEMA. From October of 2017 until April of 2019, Ellison provided things of value to Tribble to influence his decision to award Cobra with restoration work, according to the Justice Department. Prosecutors claimed that Ellison provided Tribble with personal helicopter use and use of a credit card, then that he secured employment within Cobra for Patterson. All right, lots more to this story, but the key to it all is who is Cobra, who operates it, who benefits from it. All that is very interesting as well. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. Let me see if I can grab some of the things I saw tweeted around yesterday about Cobra Acquisitions that will give us some idea of exactly who we think these people are, although not all of them were official sources. Let's see if I can grab some I guess I can get either reliable information or bad information to start with here, but definitely saw some unofficial sources tweeting about them yesterday. Let's see, what else was left in this story here? These defendants, we left off about finding out about the bribes that were offered to Tribble from Ellison in exchange for awarding this contract and getting some employment deals here. These defendants were supposed to come to Puerto Rico to help during the recovery after the devastation suffered from Hurricane Maria. Instead, they decided to take advantage of the precarious conditions of our electric power grid and engaged in a bribery and honest services wire fraud scheme. It's a confusing enough name. In order to enrich themselves illegally, U.S. Attorney Rosa Emilia Rodriguez Velez said in a statement, "All government officials are entrusted with performing their duties honestly and ethically." Oh, well, bad idea. I mean, it's not working out. It's a good idea, but it's not working out in reality. The charged offenses are reprehensible, more so in light of PREPA's and Puerto Rico's fiscal crisis, as she says, added Rodriguez Velez. Okay. So the speculation that I saw, and we'll see how well we can connect it to reality, from various random tweeters, some of whom have reason to know and some of whom may not, was that Cobra Acquisitions is just one of many names under which the same people were operating here. I've seen the accusation or the veiled reference out there. So one tweeter says, "Remember Cobra Acquisitions, the dinky little company that had never handled a major contract before and effed up in Puerto Rico almost from the get-go. Yeah, well, that's Cobra Acquisitions. I mean, that's the same name. So who are they? Another tweeter who mentions Mammoth Energy Services Incorporated, which says it's standing by the hurricane repair work that subsidiary Cobra Acquisitions did in Puerto Rico after the Wall Street Journal reported that U.S. authorities were examining the company's role in restoring power to the island, except I don't have access to the Wall Street Journal on that one. But I recall that the power restoration job has been troublesome from the beginning, not just the actual, doing the work, which was complicated enough, but rather the awarding of the contracts. And that for a while there was the idea was that another contractor was under consideration who also had no serious experience in restoring power, and that was remember the Whitefish company from Whitefish, Montana. That is that right? Do I have that correct? Who was a favorite of then? Was he Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke's, a good friend of his who ran the place, and that they were going to get the contract. And I did see some mention of them too. Let's see. And here's an article. Let me just follow up, I guess, a little bit with this. Here's a Bloomberg article that seems to come close to helping figure out who's who here. But this is from back in November of 2017. Under the headline of Puerto Rico's other no-bid contractor says it's no Whitefish. So back in November of 2017, I guess this was an issue, and they curiously decided to defend themselves that way. Even though it's best known for fracking and has only been in the business of restoring downed power lines for a few months, Mammoth Energy Services Incorporated got a no-bid $187 million contract to restore electricity to hurricane-ravaged Puerto Rico. How it got to be the $1.8 billion, 10 times as large, is, well, I don't know. That story lies somewhere between November of 2017 and today. This is behind a paywall, but the rest that is visible to me says that's drawn the attention of skeptical U.S. lawmakers who helped lead the charge to get canceled a $300 million contract awarded to Whitefish Energy Holdings, LLC. Mammoth executives bristle at any comparison to Whitefish and say the company, which saw its stock surge 19% when it landed the job, is up to the task. Well, it's going on 2 years later, a year and a half later, and a couple of their executives have been charged with fraud after all. So it's no Whitefish, but it's pretty similar. So I don't know. You tell me. I don't know whether there's any connection between them, but lots of people who are in the, if not the business, then have the hobby or the habit of saying that they're all connected, say that they are. This person here tweeting, Information Guard tweeting, yes, it seems media is still catching up. The San Juan mayor was generally skeptical when presented the Cobra contract in a filmed segment on Democracy Now! During the time. Cobra and Mammoth have as many inferential connections to Trump as Whitefish had to Zinke. So we'll see whether any of that comes out in the coming weeks and months as the trial develops. I guess I just don't see anything that establishes hard connections. But interesting, though, that they've ended up in the same place despite denying it. So there you go. How to read a Trumpster comment, if they are indeed Trumpsters, when Mammoth and Cobra said, and it's interesting that they're all sort of animal names, but when Mammoth and Cobra said, we're no Whitefish, what they really meant was, well, we are actually quite like Whitefish, corrupt, in fact, and engaged in bribery, and will end up in federal court when all is said and done. So that's pretty weird. Okay, but they do seem to be separate entities. They just seem to have come by their contracts in similar ways. So That would be interesting if it turns out that the Trump administration reaction to finding out that whitefish was entirely corrupt was to replace them with mammoth and cobra, only to find out that they too were totally corrupt. What a surprise! How did that happen in this administration? We may never know. All right, many other things to cover here, some of which may fall under or in Jones' purview here. So we'll save a couple of these things and see whether there's other things that we can use as connective tissue here between where we are now and where we think we may end up as we speak to Joan. Here's something that's not connected to anything, just in case you didn't see this news on your own. Todd Palin apparently has filed for divorce from Sarah Palin. I don't really know what to make of that. I guess nothing. But there you have it. The fact that it's sort of put this way, like he seems to have, or appears to have, or we think that he's filed for divorce, comes from the fact that they have tried to keep the proceedings private, and I guess that's fine. But there's only so much you can do, and they managed to figure it out. Todd Palin appears to have filed for divorce from former Alaska governor and one-time vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin, his wife of 31 years. In a document filed Friday in Anchorage Superior Court, Todd Palin, 55, asked to dissolve the marriage, citing, quote, an incompatibility of temperament between the parties such that they find it impossible to live together as husband and wife. That is unfortunate. The divorce filing uses initials rather than full names, but it identifies the couple's marriage date and the birth date of their only child, who is still a minor, Trig Palin. The filing asks for joint legal custody of the child. Anchorage attorney Kimberly Colbo representing Todd Palin in a divorce. And I don't know, do you really care to hear the rest of it? It's sad enough that we are talking about Sarah Palin at all, much less sad personal details of her life. But okay, they're not funny and wacky details like getting into a street brawl at a barbecue, which is always fun to hear about the Palins. But okay, I guess those hijinks as a married couple, anyway, are over for now. All right, let's see. Things to bring up with Joan, in addition to the broadening of the various inquiries by the committees investigating the administration and or looking directly into impeachment. I have this bit of news from The Hill, reported yesterday. Senate Democrats to force a vote to nix Trump's emergency declaration. And this might bring us back to something state-based that Greg sent late in the show. Well, late for his segment anyway. Couldn't fit it into his segment, and Abby didn't want to talk about it. Anyway, here's what we got from The Hill. Senate Democrats in the federal Congress here are planning to force a vote to try to nix President Trump's emergency declaration, transferring military construction money to fund the U.S.-Mexico border wall. We're a little bit late in this, but I guess it's the second shot at it. We'll see whether it makes any sense. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, making the announcement from the Senate floor, blasted Trump for making a brazen power grab and trying to leapfrog Congress. Yeah, that sucks, especially if you're in Congress. The president's national emergency declaration was, and is, an outrageous power grab by a president who refuses to respect the constitutional separation of powers. It's true, but I don't think it's going to change his mind about it. Does our country truly have checks and balances, particularly when we have such an overreaching president? Schumer asked from the Senate floor, and the answer is no. Schumer added that if Congress didn't nix Trump's emergency declaration, it would set a dangerous precedent that could allow a president to use their national emergency powers when Congress refuses to fund a priority. This is so wrong. The president has clearly attempted to usurp the power of the purse given exclusively to Congress by the Constitution. The recourse for such a brazen power grab should be an overwhelming bipartisan vote in the Congress to terminate the emergency declaration. Well, it should be to impeach him, but okay. But for starters, to terminate the emergency declaration and reassert our constitutional authority, Schumer said. We have never had such a presidential overreach on an emergency basis, Schumer said. Schumer said the vote would take place within the next month. So tick, 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 tick. We'll wait. Congress is set to leave town again at the end of the month for a 2-week break because they're tired from their 6-week break. It would be the second time the vote has come up in the Senate. You may have said to yourself, hey, I thought they did that already. The chamber previously voted to terminate the emergency declaration in March, with 12 Republican senators joining Democrats to block Trump from being able to raid military construction funds. But Trump vetoed the resolution, and the House failed to override Trump's veto. The decision to force a second vote comes after the Trump administration began notifying congressional leadership and lawmakers who would have projects affected by the declaration that they were going to move forward with their plan to redirect $3.6 billion in emergency declaration funding. So I guess what's happening here is now that there has been produced a list of projects that would be terminated or delayed or would otherwise have their funding diverted, and we know what projects are the losers here, and this is a good read of things here, for the Senate to say, well, maybe now we might get more votes in favor of an expected veto, in favor of a override of an expected veto. This might change the vote count in the calculations. Of course, somewhere along the line, it could go the other way too. Somebody who voted against it in principle last time might find out, oh, I'm not hurt at all. So screw it. I'll go vote with the president because I caught hell for voting against him last time. We'll see. The decision to force a second vote comes after the Trump administration began notifying congressional leaderships of who the losers are, right? Schumer then goes on to say, how do we say to the men and women who risk their lives for us that we're taking their money away? The president is taking their money away and we shrug our shoulders, Schumer said on Tuesday. Well, you don't say anything. You just shrug your shoulders and walk away. In case you were wondering how to deal with that. The procedure being pursued by Senate Democrats is privileged, meaning Republicans won't be able to block the vote from happening, and they need only a simple majority for the resolution to pass the Senate. And of course, then if it's vetoed, you got to get the 2/3. Under the National Emergencies Act, Democrats can force additional votes on resolutions of disapproval, blocking Trump every 6 months, prolonging the political headache for Republicans. So that's something to keep in mind as well, right? Even if this, too, is vetoed and fails to be overridden, then start the clock running. And if the emergency lasts 6 months, you'll be able to bring up the same resolution or a similar one again and force another vote. And it may all end up being symbolic or just about putting Republicans on the record as defending this stupid idea. But that's worth something, too. So something to watch out for and keep in mind. To switch things back to the state side, just to fill in some time here, Greg sent these things along here. First, a comment that he found about the situation on Twitter, and then some wider background about the issue. This comes from North Carolina State Senator Wiley Nickel, who I feel, did his name come up earlier, or is it just so unique and fun that we must think like feels like a name we've heard before. Anyway, Senator Nickel here says this is a new low for the North Carolina House Republicans. The voters rejected them at the ballot box, so they decided to lie, steal, and cheat until they got their way. That does sound familiar, doesn't it? And here's the headline he's tweeting about. House overrides budget veto in surprise vote with almost half of lawmakers absent. And I think this is the same article, yes, that Greg sent along that is attached to this tweet here. So let's take a look at that for a closer look at what exactly is happening here. Dawn Baumgartner Vaughn and Lauren Horsch reporting today for the News and Observer from out of Raleigh. In a surprise move on Wednesday morning, the North Carolina House of Representatives voted to override Governor Roy Cooper's veto of the state budget, with just over half of the 120 members present to vote. So barely a legal quorum even on that. Democrats in the chamber objected to the bill being brought up, as well they should have, saying they were told there would be no votes during the 8:30 a.m. session and that it was just a formality so work could begin. You see the similar things happening on the House floor all the time as the work week begins, very often Monday or even Tuesday, sort of a pro forma session, but sparsely attended and in fact barely attended except for people who have particular business and whoever's working as the presiding officer. And sometimes you wonder, well, what would it be like? What if you just snuck that thing in? Rarely, if ever, happens in the U.S. Congress for various reasons. But I guess sometimes because there's less scrutiny going on in state houses, it happens, I think, more frequently there. And less scrutiny and less scruples as well. So basically that's what's happening. Is in one of those barely attended sessions where one side assures the other nothing's going to happen and the other side takes their word for it, turns out that they had a trick up their sleeve and they actually just moved the veto of the budget back onto the floor while everybody else was tending to other business. It's rather startling. Representative Jason Saine, S-A-I-N-E, a Lincolnton Republican, and I guess not that sane, made the motion to reconsider the state budget, and chaos in the chamber quickly ensued. House Speaker Tim Moore, a Kings Mountain Republican, said the announcement was not made and even asked the House clerk to back him up. What does that mean? Said that announcement was not made. This is a travesty of the process, and you know it. Representative Deb Butler, a Democrat of New Hanover, said when the vote was called, noting that Democratic leadership was not present, "We will not yield." I guess they didn't have to. Moore ignored the objections of Democrats that were in the room and instead mowed through the vote with only 64 members present. The vote then was 55-9. Both chambers of the General Assembly need 3/5 majority of the members present and voting to override a veto from the governor. "How dare you, Mr. Speaker," Butler said. "The trickery that is being evidenced this morning, is tantamount to a criminal offense." Butler described the vote as hijacking of the process. The budget impasse has dragged out all summer long. Pieces of the budget were starting to be passed, including raises for many state employees. Cooper had complained that the override vote was on the House calendar repeatedly since being placed there on July 9th, but no vote had been held. Day after day, they put the vetoed budget on the calendar, and day after day, they don't vote on an override. They try strong-arming, bribes, public pressure, university tours. Why would that happen? Is that good? And even trickery. Still, they do not vote on the vetoed budget. Cooper said a few weeks ago the governor offered up a budget compromise and said he was waiting on the Republicans' counterproposal. While Republicans have a majority in both the House and Senate, a supermajority is needed to override a veto. After the session, Republicans went into a caucus meeting. A press conference will be held shortly. We'll see whether that's the case. Representative Becky Carney, a Democrat, said she was still processing what happened this morning as she headed into a meeting. It is noted that it is a developing story and that they expect new details, but this is the latest filing updated 20 minutes ago, so we'll keep an eye out and see if we can figure out what, if anything, has happened here and what, if anything, can actually be done about it. But now, time to switch gears here. Well, not really. I mean, it's still legislative procedure. It just was the North Carolina legislature. We can switch back. Joan McCarter is here, although we could switch to Idaho legislature if we want to. Joan, good morning. How are you?
I'm fine.
Anything happening in Idaho legislature? Anybody being tricked or suddenly bringing up budget override votes in the middle of pro forma sessions or anything?
Just
there would be no reason to there.
Crappy people, North Carolina Republicans.
They really are, and I mean, you'd think they'd stop for a while. Just they've been in the spotlight for so long, and I guess they're just used to it now. And, well, nothing's happening. They keep calling us out as evil people, but no one's getting rid of us or forcing us from office,
Right.
tarring
We
and
keep
feathering
doing
us.
these illegal things. We can keep declaring what we're doing not illegal, even though it was illegal
Yeah,
previously.
right. And
Like substituting the candidate in
yeah, right.
the special election yesterday.
What the hell was that about? I don't know how we got to. I mean, I resigned to that a long time ago. It was, but when they first made that decision, I know a lot of us probably thought,
Like, no,
you know,
doesn't the law say the same candidate has to run again?
I don't know.
Well, sure, but we can do away with that law.
Yeah, right. Well, we'll get rid of that, and even just basic fairness of if there's a race between two people and one guy gets caught cheating, the next person wins. That's you watch the Olympics. I've seen it. We know how this
That
works.
would have worked too.
Yeah,
That would have worked too.
and the House Democrats absolutely had that power to do that. They could simply have said, "Yeah, this is how we think it comes out this way." They put two parties put together their slates. These are the two candidates. This guy says he won, but he's disqualified for cheating. There's another person here. They win. It's a Democrat, and it would take a majority vote to give him the seat. But we don't want to upset anybody. So now it's a Republican seat again. So, oh well, too bad. I mean, I guess we're going to get a lot of points, though, for being fair. So, pretty good. Those brownie points. We're going to save up for that brownie. Baby, I'm waiting for that brownie. I don't even know if that's what brownie points really means, but okay.
I don't think so, but I don't know.
But I would like it to end in a brownie.
A brownie right now would be really...
I really would.
I could use that, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yes.
what a way to celebrate, to commemorate. You don't really celebrate 9/11, you commemorate 9/11.
Right.
You
If
memorialize
you're
it.
Donald Trump. Congratulations to the United States on its
Yeah.
9/11.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So, yeah, what a thing for the North Carolina House Republicans to do.
Well, like I said, this stuff happens in state legislatures more often because they think nobody's looking. And they're not. We looked, but only because
We're looking.
Greg
We're going to
said so.
continue to look.
Yes.
We've rolled out a bunch of legislative endorsements in Texas, and we're not in Texas, in Virginia. We're looking ahead to Texas. So, yes, we are going to keep paying attention to that because it matters, because it really, really, really matters in 2020.
Yes.
Because of redistricting,
Right.
which is exactly how the North Carolina Republican Party managed to get a stranglehold over the state.
Yeah.
Gerrymandering. So
Right.
we got a lot of work to do, Kagro.
Yeah. Well, we could do some of that now, or we could talk about that work, certainly, anyway. If we were to get off the air and do the work, that would be good for the country, bad for the show.
Right. We can preview that work.
Yes.
That work will be one of the things I was talking with Joe Sudbay, everybody's best friend, Joe Sudbay,
Yes.
about it last night. Harkening back to something we did in 2006, where we pressured all of our Democratic House members who didn't have real races to use their war chests to help challengers, to help other Democratic candidates trying to get there. And we could do it too for lower tier races, for legislative races.
Okay.
We could have a person in the House who doesn't really have an opponent and has a $1.2 million war chest.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you hire some folks to do GOTV to try to flip a senator, house, state district in your congressional district?
Yeah, or nearby. I guess it could happen elsewhere, but it might make most sense to do something neighboring, or at least in the same state. It might be more
hire
convincing.
some folks to register voters and to do GOTV and do some registration drives yourself.
That's a good idea.
We looked it up. In 2006, there was something like $21 million that these incumbents who didn't have challengers we're hanging on to.
Yeah.
Use
All
it.
right. Yeah, I mean, it's a fine idea, certainly. And it's like Moneyball kind of thing. You pull out the spreadsheets and figure it out. People are anxious often to brag about how much money they have in the bank, and so they're on the record somewhere.
That's to scare off other candidates.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
when
So,
there aren't other candidates, put that money to use.
right. Once it has worked its magic and scared off the other candidates, good, fine. Now we can scare off some other candidates by defeating them. All right, that's an excellent idea.
So look for that project coming forward.
Okay, that's a great project for us to undertake and to help out with. We'll be back and think of some more in 2 minutes and tell you what they are. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, with a brand new interruption to say thanks to all of you who support the show. Remember when I told you that our average monthly donation was about $7, for which you were getting 2 great hours of news and entertainment 5 days a week, and how that came out to about 70 cents an hour? That's a pretty good deal, except it's wrong. The math actually works out closer to 17 cents an hour. It is hard to beat a deal like that, and even harder to send your kids to college on. Thankfully, Patreon.com makes it easy to make that work. Patreon, Patreon.com, is the simple, secure way to make recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Just search for me or the show name on the site, and they make it easy to crowdfund the show so that the power of our numbers can keep the show going for just a few bucks a month. Once again, thanks so much for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan is still with us. We were just having a bit of a chat during the break about, various things, and including, of course, today's September 11th anniversary. But, at this point, it's not it's not the 20th anniversary, and there's almost, I don't even know if there's anything to add to all of this. We go through our regular annual observances, and aside from the strange anomaly of having almost, possibly, maybe, if you don't believe he was just making it up at spur of the moment, invited the Taliban over to Camp David to help celebrate the anniversary, which, of course, like as you mentioned, is not a celebratory anniversary at all, but somehow Trump thinks everything is. Have a good time, everyone, he would likely have said. And
by the way, I'm firing my national security advisor, or he's resigning.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, they're not clear on that one yet.
In recognition of the day.
Right. There's a little bit of a competition on Twitter as between the two of them still. Trump will insist, or is insisting, I fired him, and Bolton attempting to do his best to say, no, I resigned. You didn't fire me, but I mean,
as crazy as it is,
yeah.
I believe John Bolton.
Maybe. I mean, Trump is inclined to do that, right? People resign and then he runs in and says, I fired them. Or if it happens in reverse, he comes up with something else. He usually tells the opposite story so that he's in control. People only leave when he says so. And it's part of his brand, the you're fired thing, but we have learned in his term of office that he rarely fires anyone. He certainly never does anything face to face. So, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't a good match. It never was. Trump complained about him a lot, as far as so we've heard anyway. Through various anonymous sources, and it became all the more believable when they said, yeah, because he doesn't like mustaches. That sounds like Trump. He probably would not like somebody because of mustaches. He didn't come from central casting. So I don't know who comes next, or whether there is a deputy who becomes acting NSA, or whether he just leaves it vacant. But I think almost all of the armed forces branches lack secretaries. We have, a stopgap defense secretary. I don't think there's a Homeland Security secretary now. There's
no acting.
Yeah, no national security advisor. The guy was about to allegedly have the Taliban over for some negotiations, but who would do the negotiating? there aren't any people.
Again, on the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks.
He probably forgot about that entirely when he made up the... I still maintain that, there was the reason, as he put out in his tweet, it's unbeknownst to almost everyone, because I didn't tell him, and I didn't have the idea until just now. I was going to invite the Taliban to Camp David to conclude this. And there's a whole...
the Taliban leaders were going to come to the United States.
Yeah. Yeah, that's on their agenda. By the way, they were going to get through the Muslim ban really easily.
Right.
So we banned all Muslims except the Taliban? That seems backwards.
Go through customs and border control?
Right.
Yeah, that's happening.
Sure, I'm sure that would have worked great. Yeah, that's funny. You're coming from Afghanistan.
What's your profession?
Yeah, I'm in the Taliban. Really? What's your business here? Oh, I'm going to Camp David. What the hell you are? No, the president invited me. What, do you think I'm an idiot? No, I think the president's an idiot. Oh, well, you may have a point there. Hold on a minute. I'll call. Who would you even call? The Taliban is here, sir, and they say they're going to Camp David. Almost no one knows about it. That really, honestly. I think he made it up. But there's these long analyses, of course, in the New York Times. Maggie Haberman is pretty sure he's crazy like a fox again. He totally was planning it. He really just was going to keep it a surprise. But the reason he's still stupid is, you see, that they actually had some sort of deal in place, and he was just trying to engineer a photo opportunity that he could use to steal the credit for having done the negotiations. And the claim is that made everybody mad, and so they didn't show up. But I still think the better and clearer and more likely story is nobody was coming to the United States.
They were not coming to the United States. He inserted that.
Yeah. So
setting back negotiations, who knows how far.
Yeah, which, All right, well, so there you have it.
The president of the United States is a national security threat.
Yes.
I mean, we knew this already.
True, and more...
the extracted CIA spy certainly knew that. The CIA knew it, including Pompeo.
Yeah, I guess so.
Back in 2017 when he ordered the extraction of the spy from Russia.
That's pretty amazing, right? So they thought he spilled it or would have, or maybe... It's not clear whether they thought he would do it intentionally.
He would have.
Yeah.
And this happened just several weeks before he met with Putin. The meeting with Putin, in which the only people present were interpreters, and the meeting from which he took the interpreters' notes and destroyed them.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty amazing, too. So, what's in the notes? We should take them to court in Scotland. It worked pretty well over there when the notes don't show up. But that was something else Greg was describing to us from the Brexit mess. But
I haven't had a chance to read that yet.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy. Crikey. Right. We did hear that come up. But yeah, I mean, right. So what we don't know is where did the notes say the name of our spy in the Kremlin is, whatever. And apparently we know the name too. So, but the newspapers are patting themselves on the back for not printing the guy's name.
Ken Delanian at NBC gave his name.
Did he? Oh, I thought he said he was... Oh, whoops.
Yeah. Yeah, his name and location were... Well, I mean, one of the things was for some reason he decided to use his own name.
Yes, I did hear that. Which is not a good idea.
He is now in an undisclosed location. His cover having been entirely blown. So
I guess, but yeah, I don't know. All right. So, I mean, I heard that he had used his own name, but I thought that was all that Delanian said. But he actually said, and his name is?
Yeah, his name is out. His neighborhood is out. His location is out.
Okay, well.
His previous location.
Right. His undisclosed location is upstairs.
Which I'm sure makes all of the neighbors feel happier since they, now don't have to worry about having any polonium floating around the neighborhood.
Yeah, I know. That's the one reason I wanted to find out what neighborhood is it. Is it mine? I want to find out. I'd like to know so that I can get to an undisclosed location or something like that. And now I don't even know whether I believe that the guy... I guess one thing you could do is hide in plain sight, right? If you're using your own name, you're that foolish. I'm now at an undisclosed location. Undisclosed to the rest of you. It's the same location. He went to Camp David. So, I don't know. It was worrisome. But all right, so now we have that. So it's interesting that he's maybe possibly giving away the names of... And apparently he was quite a productive spy, too.
Yes.
Gave away
close
information
enough
for
to
close to a
Putin
decade.
He was the person supposedly who got the information to the CIA, to the intelligence community, that Putin was helping Trump in the election.
So surely destroying your notes afterwards would raise no suspicion that Trump maybe wanted that guy gone too, because it helps his case. So,
but he was gone by the time Trump had that meeting with Putin. So
okay, but now we can just say, but he lives in Arlington.
Because Trump had already given away Israeli
Oh,
intelligence
right.
to Lavrov and what's his name?
Kislyak.
Kislyak
Yes.
in that Oval Office meeting in which
Yeah.
he was showing off the fact that he was president.
Pretty nice.
Look what I know now that I'm president.
Yeah,
Isn't this cool?
it did make me
They
wonder.
tell me things like...
You wouldn't believe it. Let me tell you something that I'm not supposed to tell you, just to show how informed I am. I am curious about whether it was, whether he would give away information like, here, let me help you. Here's some information you'll need to get rid of a spy, or whether they feared that he would just accidentally blurt something out. I have questions, but yeah, I think
don't know if, I think it's the boasting thing.
Yeah,
really.
I think you're right. I think that's probably it. I mean,
But
he's
hey,
not.
now I have the tallest building in New York City.
I guess so. Yeah. Well, all right. He's worrisome. So now he's a national security threat himself. All the supposed adults in the room are now largely gone. Mattis has been running around promoting himself as a superhero guy for being that adult, but he was no help while he was there, and I don't really know why. I don't know why he's being treated the way he is in his publicity tour. And I noticed they're not asking him anything like about the latest armed forces involved scandal, like at Prestwick Airport. No one seems to want to ask him, hey, did you know about that? What did you know about Prestwick, and when did you know it? But they are interested in doing QVC ads for his book on the Sunday shows.
Doesn't it make perfect sense that the Air Force would refuel from a trip to Syria in Scotland?
Well, I guess it's not completely
that would be
beyond
the flight path, I would assume.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to take a look at a map there. I mean, there are some weird routes out there, but yeah, Prestwick wouldn't necessarily be the place. And I did see
I don't think it was ever the place previous to Trump.
That's the story.
Since it tends to be the actual military bases where they do that.
You would think. And I did see somebody making the claim that I think the total spent at Prestwick by the U.S. military from 2008 to 2017 was, let me see if I have the figure correct here, $0 on fuel.
Oh, yeah.
And then it went to several million, and that seems odd, especially the part about sending tanker planes to fill up the tanks there, not only refuel themselves, but I thought I'd refuel the entire U.S. military. Give me 1 billion gallons of fuel. That must have been very exciting for the people of Prestwick, though.
Speaking of grift.
Yes.
Yeah. $600,000 we spent on limos alone for Pence staying at Trump's place in Ireland.
Yeah. Is it to drive across Ireland to get to Dublin? I thought he was flying.
Yeah. I thought he flew too, but the crew, the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Government, or in Washington,
yes.
whatever it's called. Yeah.
Those guys.
And now I've got John Bolton over the story, so I can't pop up with John Bolton's face. That's
how exciting. Is he selling anything yet?
Anyway, crew discovered through a search of government records that the government spent $600,000 in limousines to ferry President Pence and his fellow travelers across Ireland. Now, we don't know if those were Trump-owned limousines.
Oh, yeah. Does he not travel with his own? And I mean, Air Force Two is not as big, but I mean,
I don't know if they could
or the planes
bring
they
the
use
whole
for that.
fleet of.
That would be something if he rented the limos from the Trump Doonbeg on top of all that. Oh, yeah. I mean, they have limos in Ireland, I guess. I assume so, right?
I would assume.
Yes. So I don't know. I could have rented them there, but I for some reason I thought the reporting was that he was flying, that he may have gone by helicopter, they may have used the Air Force Two jet to jump over, which is expensive as well. But it's amazing that we don't actually know very much for sure about how he went back and forth. But all right, I guess crew found something out about it. That is, more garbage. I bet they are probably rented through Doonbeg, or you just went to the concierge desk. I need like 5 limos. All right.
We don't know. We don't know for sure.
How can we not
We know that it's really, really stinky, and a lot of money went into Trump's coffers for the Trump organization.
I guess they don't tell us over there. I guess there's a cohort in Doonbeg that enjoys it. They get a lot of money. So they're very happy with the Trump arrangement. Like, I guess the people at Preston.
Is anybody who has to deal with Trump really happy with it? I mean, I guess he employs some people. Does he pay them?
I guess that's the next question. They might be, well, like the last time, right, at Doonbeg. Didn't the Trump boys go out to the bar and then not pay?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, what can I tell you? Maybe they'll learn their lesson eventually. Shoosh. There's a lot of... It is rather amazing how much corruption is going on, and of course, how slow Democrats in the House are to react to it is kind of annoying as well.
Kind of annoying?
Yeah, you could say that.
Just a little? Yeah. When we've got like 6 impeachable offenses happening on a weekly basis.
Mm-hmm.
And we still don't have clarity from House leadership on what exactly they're doing. Some say, oh yeah, sure, we're doing impeachment hearings right now. Mm-hmm. No, we're thinking about impeachment. Maybe we do.
Yeah, right.
I think it's time for Pelosi to step up and say, yeah, what we're doing is an impeachment inquiry, and this is why. Mm-hmm. And we can go ahead and take care of the people's business, but paramount of people's business is dealing with the corruption in the White House.
Right, absolutely. It makes almost no sense to deal. You can't deal with the people's business without having an eye on the fact that there's money involved and that there's a president who's actively interested in stealing as much of it as he can before it reaches the people you're sending it to. So, you kind of have to handle these things on parallel tracks.
I don't believe that gets in the way of anything that the House is trying to do.
No.
Like keep pressure on Moscow Mitch McConnell.
That's why we have the committee system.
And on election security. Because all of it is of a piece. Mm-hmm. All of it is of a Republican Party that's enabling the corruption in the White House.
Yeah. I don't see the contradiction.
And, by the way, allowing hundreds of thousands of people to be killed by guns.
Yes.
Every decade.
Yeah. Well, that's something that's
I think it's 600,000 since 9/11. People who have died in mass shootings.
Oh, mass shootings alone?
I believe so, yeah.
The number would be much higher if it included everything, accidents and just straight out murders, but small scale murder. It adds up. Yeah, and as I understand it, the game on the Senate side is that McConnell says, well, I won't bring anything up unless the president says he'll sign it. And the president says, well, I'm not going to say what I'm going to sign because I'm waiting
until
for the
we
Senate
know what can pass in the Senate.
Yeah, so they both sort of blame one another but also give, I guess, give carte blanche to the other to dictate what is it that they want, but nobody wants to say anything.
Which is nothing. Yeah, and that's how they do nothing.
Yeah, it's working great. So yeah,
Except
that's always
for,
the plan.
the people dying, that part of it.
Right. That's just sort of background noise to these guys.
As of yesterday, according to the Gun Violence Archive, 10,326 people have been killed by gun violence this year. 10,326 people have been killed by guns this year. Right. 2,630 of them are children.
Yeah. That's within tolerances for Republicans. They think it's everybody else's fault. It'll never happen to them. Even as members of Congress are getting shot, they still think it'll happen to everybody else.
293 people were killed in mass shootings.
Just this year, yeah.
Just this year.
Well, we've had a lot of them.
And 20,622 have been injured.
Mm-hmm.
And Mitch McConnell says he's not going to bring anything to the floor. He's not going to be pressured to bring anything to the floor because this is just Democrats being theatrical and trying to scare people about guns.
Ah, yes.
I don't think it's the Democrats that are scaring people somehow about guns. I think it's the 10,326 people who've been killed by guns this year.
That might scare people. True.
I think it's the guns doing the killing of all of these people.
Yeah, so it's interesting that it's their view that telling people what's happening, the truth about what's going on out there, that you're just scaring them. Okay, I mean, by the way, we'll probably be moving legislation on vaping a lot sooner, which I believe has killed 6 people.
No, they're not moving legislation on vaping.
What?
This is something else Mitch McConnell has done.
I thought that was his that he had gotten the okay from the tobacco people to do that.
No, the okay was raising the legal age for buying tobacco.
Ah, okay.
That was the compromise to distract everybody from vaping.
Oh.
Because vaping, and particularly the flavored vapes, are the things where they're now making all of their money.
I see.
So that's untouchable.
Okay, so even tobacco.
So, yeah, McConnell's big anti-tobacco thing was a head fake.
I see.
Raising the age for being able to legally sell tobacco, or buy tobacco, rather.
I got it. Okay.
So that the vaping could still happen. That was trying to distract everybody.
Although I wouldn't be surprised to see lots of outrage and some movement even among Republicans for taking it up because it's the sort of thing that 3, 6 people. Well, but one of my big donors' nephews was one of them. So yeah, we'll see. Okay.
But here's the thing with McConnell that that we've got to realize. He doesn't care how many people die.
That is rarely an interest for him, sure.
Whether it's by guns, whether it's by vaping, whether it's by losing their health insurance. People's death, as long as they are out of the womb, doesn't matter.
Yes. Although they're trying to come up with a way to overlap on that, too.
Well, they are, and it's ridiculous, of course. But
yes,
that's another show.
What about a law against patios? This is something that I've been waiting to see.
All patio surfaces must be completely flat.
Right, and padded as well. So it's starting a new trend out there. But you would think that would be of some interest to him. But no, the number of people who die is just alarmist tactics to him, no matter what people die of. Unless there's some money to be made. It just
doesn't matter to him.
Yeah, he's
America's deaths are insignificant to him.
They're not mine, so.
However preventable they might be. He doesn't care.
Yeah. The nothing will sway him. Don't bother showing him numbers from Kentucky. Even that's also of no interest to him.
It's. I don't know whether he's a sociopath. I mean, I think Paul Ryan was truly a sociopath. I don't know what Mitch McConnell is. I don't understand what could make him function other than pure power. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's just it. Maybe it's just power.
I guess so. I mean, like a lot of Republicans. I mean, he views these things as, well, people die all the time. I can't prevent everybody from dying. It's not my job. But in some cases you can, and you should, and people would appreciate it. But of no interest to him.
The only thing right now that matters to him, I believe, is remaking the judiciary, and I'm not even sure what's motivating that. The ability to say that he did it?
I don't know. I guess like it's the legacy thing to him, or just, I don't know. He's not going to be able to enjoy it for that long. He's, like we say, everybody dies.
They're doing 6 district court votes today.
Yeah.
So far, he's confirmed 146 judicial nominees.
Uh-huh.
2 Supreme Court, 99 district court judges.
Yeah. How closely do you keep tabs on? Do you know how many? Well, I'm sure you don't have the number or how many there are, but do you happen to notice any of them as Liberty University grads? Just curious.
I haven't. I'll have to do a search on that.
I mean, that's a thing, and there's no way that anybody's really been monitoring that closely. But from time to time, you see when the really crazy ones come up where a Republican says they might not vote for them. Sometimes
it's Liberty University.
Yeah, very often it's a Liberty University person. But I am a little worried about the number of people they're embedding, not only in the judiciary, but in the civil service, in the various departments, or as legal counsel for various departments, or in the DOJ. I mean, that was a big deal in the Bush administration, was packing the DOJ with ideologues, and the best source of them was the Liberty University Law School.
Yes.
So
I'm trying to read about the one that's today, but the story is on HuffPo, and I can't get the ad to stop playing.
Oh.
Stephen Menashe, who had apparently worked with both Betsy DeVos and with our other Stephen Miller, in the White House. He's a 40-year-old lawyer. He clerked for Alito. He was acting general counsel for DeVos. And they are pushing through his nomination as quickly as they can. They're expediting it. Having hearings today in Judiciary Committee when they know that several of the members of the Judiciary Committee, Klobuchar, Harris, and Booker, are out because of the debate tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. So
this guy is scary.
Wow. You have an article on him somewhere you can share?
I do have an article on him, which I will share with you now, which is the one that keeps playing that ad, so I can't.
Well, I'll wait for it for later. But okay, yeah. All right, well, just keep people up to speed on who are the worst, most egregious of the nominees, and not that it does anything to stop them, but you want to know who they are.
There was quite a protest yesterday in the halls of the Senate over the fact that they keep putting through people who won't say they think Brown versus Board of Education was correctly decided, including against Democrats who have voted for some of these judges, including Chris Coons and Mark Warner.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah, I guess that's the new trolling.
So, yeah, judges is still a thing, and it's still a thing that it's so frustrating because we're completely helpless on at this point. Yeah. Even if Democrats weren't voting to put them through, we're screwed.
Yeah. But it wouldn't be a bad idea to start asking people why it is that they go along with these guys, especially when they move them on conveyor belts like that.
Right. It's the only way we can attack it when we have a Democratic majority in the Senate against the Democratic president.
Yeah.
We have to look at judicial reform. We've got to keep the issue alive.
Yeah, and it would do us a favor if we could talk more openly about the I word, impeachment, without anybody getting in the way, because even if we never manage it with Donald Trump, it might become an issue with judges sometime later. We ought to get used to it.
Warm up with Wilbur Ross
Right.
and William Barr.
Right, a good idea. No real reason to keep them around. No one, I don't know of anybody who's going to come and champion Wilbur Ross here.
I don't think so.
So, all right. Well, him and his slippers, they deserve to be gone. Just tell him to tap his slippers together and say there's no place like home and see what happens. Forget impeaching him. We'll just transport it. Okay. Well, thanks very much, Joan, stopping by and just an informal chat here. I'll look forward to getting that article and passing that on to everybody just so everyone knows who's the worst of the judges you've been keeping an eye on.
All right.
And we'll check in again next week. I appreciate it as always. Thanks for coming by.
Absolutely.
Take
Next
care.
week.
Okay. Well, time now to hand the microphone over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy.
From Daily
Next.
Coast Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show.
With David Waldman.
Well, he's got news for you. The House Oversight Committee has threatened to subpoena documents from the Pentagon related to military personnel staying at Trump properties. Of course, on the rest of the menu, 37 businesses and counting tell customers to stop carrying guns in their stores. That's big news, big trend in the news these days. I've been keeping an eye on it as well. Stay tuned for that and much more next.